Yes.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Sarah, for giving me this opportunity. I've been looking forward to this since we first spoke several months ago. Today, I want to share with you some of the lessons I have learned while recovering from my stroke. The big lesson is to slow down and go through life with your eyes wide open. I was leading an active lifestyle, running 3 businesses, playing golf 3 days a week, going to the gym religiously, enjoying grandparenting, traveling, boating in the summer. And my mantra was always to enjoy the journey. And then on October 21st, 2022, my life hit an unexpected sudden detour when on the second hole of the golf course, my buddy said to me, "Singer, it's your turn." And they again said, "Singer, it's your turn." I couldn't move, I was frozen. I was having a stroke. Fortunately, they called 911 immediately. And then they took me right away to the front of the club where the ambulance was waiting. And that's where, in Beverly Hospital, they administered stroke clot medication, but unfortunately it did not work. And then I was transferred to Leahy in Burlington, where doctors were waiting to break up the clot. And again, they couldn't do it. But by this time, the stroke had taken its toll. I lost the ability to speak, to swallow, to eat, and lost some basic functions. I required a feeding tube for months. Now my recovery journey began at Leahy, where I worked tirelessly to regain those essential skills before being transferred to Spalding Rehab. After a month of physical therapy with little progress, I was moved to the Brudnick Center in Peabody. There I learned how to walk, talk, and use an iPhone. I'll tell you the story about the iPhone. Some friends of mine chipped in to get me a phone. As it turns out, I find out it's a refurbished phone. And I called them up and thanked them. A refurbished phone for a refurbished guy. I said it was a perfect gift. At Brudnick, I started working with their in-house physical therapy team. And the greatest number of steps I could take at that time was 3, with 2 physical therapists by my side. Just a few weeks ago, I was able to do 54 steps. Again, with 2 physical therapists. Can't leave them out. Now I've changed my mantra from enjoying the journey to slow down and enjoy life with your eyes wide open. Life's challenges often force us to slow down to fully experience the present moment. I learned the importance of celebrating small victories, recognizing progress in ways I once took for granted. It's not always about achieving monumental goals, but about acknowledging the small daily steps that lead to meaningful transformation. I'll share with you some of the lessons that I have learned. The first one is the importance of mindfulness. Now, I'll be honest with you. Whenever I went to a conference and a speaker got up and talked about mindfulness, my eyes rolled in the back of my head. It was like, to me, it was all psychobabble baloney. But now I understand it. If you look up the definition, it's about being present in the moment and being conscious and aware of what's going on around you, not worrying about the future or the present or the past. The more mindful you are, the slower you can go through life, and the more your eyes will be open to then celebrate life's little victories. You really have to train your brain to see them. So I challenge you, when you go through life, to find the smallest celebrations you can each day. I'll start you off with one. How many of you have reached that stage of life where you don't necessarily sleep through the night, right? How about one morning you wake up, you go, ooh, that was great, I slept through the night. Say it out loud. I find saying it out loud is important. It reinforces the positive. Just sit on the edge of the bed for a moment and go, oh, that was good, I slept through the night. Don't say it too loud or they may put you away. Okay? But that'd be the first one. I'll give you one small one for myself. For the first 2 years, the only way that I could find a way to charge my phone was to ask an aide to come over and take my phone and put it on the charger. And recently I've learned how at the right angle on my bed, and they give me the charger and I plug it in. When I feel that click, I know my phone is being charged. Believe it or not, I get a charge out of that too. Really gives me good, positive feedback to know I've accomplished something so small. We would never look at that as an accomplishment before. I have a new definition of mindfulness. It's to go through every day with purpose and intent to find as many small victories as I can. So next one is about strength. I now understand that strength is not just physical, it's physical and emotional as well as it's everything. Then there's a word that nobody would have used to define me before my stroke. It's patience. I've had to learn to do that, and that's been really, really tough. And we all go through life. We have good days and bad days, but when we get hit with those bad days, we like, oh my God, this is awful. And all we do is think of how awful it is. But the reality is around the corner is a good day. It always happens that way. That's life. So patience helps you get through those bad days and back onto the good days. We have to accept that life and the recovery of the stroke is not linear, and we have to learn to appreciate each moment of improvement. With all of this, I found something very positive, very important to me, and it is the power of positivity. As I mentioned, in difficult times, it's easy to focus on the difficulty and what has been lost, and we can get consumed by that. But I made a conscious decision to change my mindset, and I decided to focus on what is rather than what if. The what is what we have. The what if is stuff we've lost or failed. That's all negative energy, doesn't do us any good. That mind shift also helped me get to a place where I could feel gratitude. Now, one of the places that I was so grateful for was if my stroke had happened 10 or 15 minutes before or after it did, I could have been behind the wheel. And that outcome would have been very, very different. And if it had happened a week earlier, we were in Italy, and that would have been a different outcome as well. So I have tried to find as many places to be grateful for. Also, my buddies who recognized immediately it was a stroke and called 911, they saved my life. Studies show that the number one predictor of success is maintaining a positive outlook. And I chose and have continued to choose to celebrate each milestone, no matter how minor it seemed. Positivity doesn't erase struggle, but it provides the resilience needed to move forward. Each day I have made an effort to find at least one thing to be grateful for. Some days it was just the ability to move a little more freely. Other days it was the encouragement from family, friends, and healthcare professionals. And by actively seeking out moments of gratitude, I discovered that positivity is a practice, one that requires effort but pays off immensely. And early on, I had friends who would come in, and when they leave, they'd turn around and say, Mark, they'd remark on how positive I was, and I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. Because I didn't feel very positive early on, trust me. But what I decided to do was fake it till I make it. Okay, now I am completely full of positivity. Everywhere I look, I find it. Even today, when I came, and the bus, we went all around the world to get here. I take the ride to go to where I need to go. And I could have been very frustrated with that, but I looked at my watch and it was 11:11, which is a time to take a you wish, right? My daughter taught me that one. So I see 11:11 and I feel good again. So you really need to train your brain and practice to do it. That doesn't come easy. All of this has led me to interesting place where I find inspiration in many different places. The first is in a simple fortune cookie, where the fortune cookie said, adversity is just the door to opportunity. And then the next place I found inspiration was from, and you can find it in The Power of Song. You know the band Journey? They have a hit song called Don't Stop Believing. That's become my personal mantra. There was one night where Cheryl and I were working on the speech, probably for the 50th time. I mean, it was late at night. We were both tired. We were both hungry. And that's not a good recipe. So somehow we didn't kill each other that night. And as Cheryl was leaving to go home, I said, wait a second, listen to the radio. And believe it or not, Don't Stop Believing was on. We had a good chuckle. I also found power and inspiration in a healing prayer at the temple on Saturday morning. The title of the prayer is I Rise. And every time I said I rise, I visualized myself standing. Until we finally finished the prayer, I finally said, screw it. But I said it in a much more colorful language than that. And I had Cheryl on my left hand and my good friend Larry on my right, and they stood me up. I stood up as tall as I could get. And then they sat me back down and I went, no, I enjoyed that too much. And again I said, screw it, stand me up. So they did. And that was really great. So you can find it in all sorts of places, but you gotta have your eyes open in order to see it. I also found strength in the stories of others who would overcome adversity. Reading about people who defied the odds has helped me realize I'm not alone in my journey. Support groups, motivational books, and even online communities. They've all helped me. And I have a couple of friends who early on came to see me often. Let's call them Richie and Joe, because their names are actually Richie and Joe. So Richie would come in. Richie is the type of friend, he'll give you the unvarnished truth right to you. He'd scold me whenever I said I was ready to go. He'd go, no, you're not leaving. Oh, okay. And Joe would come in every couple of weeks. He was very important to me. I don't think he even knew why, but every time he came in, he said, Mark, he'd give me a report card. You're sitting straighter than last time I saw you. I go, that's great, thank you, because I couldn't see that progress. It was nice to hear that feedback. And then one time he said, your face is straighter. I said, is that a good thing? He said, yes. He said, you're looking more like you. I said, thank you. So it was great to have them there and get the feedback. So you have to actively look for it and encourage people to give it to you. All these lessons have allowed me to access a reservoir of power and resilience I never knew I had. My transformation, I'll talk about, and the progress I have made is undeniable. Immediately after my stroke, my only means of transfer out of the bed and into my wheelchair was by way of something called a Hoyer lift. Think of it as an electronic hammock, where I'm laying on the bed and they put this hammock thing underneath me. Then they bring a machine to pick up the hammock and me and put me in the wheelchair. Problem was early on, I couldn't stay there for more than 10 to 15 minutes at a time because of spasms in my leg. I'd have to go back into bed immediately. Now I use what is called a slide board. Think of it as a 3-foot piece of wood. beveled on either end, where they positioned properly, I can now hop on top of it, and I can slide from the bed into the wheelchair and back. So that's been great. It's given me more freedom. And once in the chair, now I can spend hours, which gives me more mobility. I now can go out into the courtyard every day on my own and read my book. Each moment forward is a triumph worth celebrating. These milestones are not just physical achievements. They represent the combination of perseverance, hope, and the power of positivity. I can now use the elevator on my own to come and go from my room and out of the nursing home. Cheryl and I go out into the community often. We go to comedy shows and concerts. I now go out into life embracing it with a whole new set of eyes. I hope that by sharing my experiences and my outlook, you will have a new way to look at life for yourself. The journey may not be easy, but with intention, mindfulness, and a belief in the power of small victories, transformation is always possible, no matter how difficult the road ahead may seem. Each step forward should be celebrated. So let me wrap up with something that I call the 4 P's of recovery. P is in Paul. The first P is to be patient, and this gets back to navigating the bad days into the good days. And that's really tough for me. Probably the toughest of all. The next is to be present. And being present means to be mindful again. And then be positive, which again goes back to focusing on what is and what we have, not what if. If I had done this or if I had done that. That doesn't get you anywhere good. The last is to be persistent. I'll tell you a little story behind this one. So when I first got moved up to the 4th floor at Brudnick, the cook came up to me. She said, "I know you're gonna walk out of here." I went, "Oh, okay." And I let that sentence sort of settle. And I said, "Okay, how do you know?" She said, "Because you're stubborn." I said, I always thought that was a negative connotation. But now instead of stubborn, I think of persistent and resilient. So what I'll do is I'll share with you one more story, and then I'll open it up for any questions you might have. So I've had the opportunity to talk to numbers of people as a result of my speaking and the articles that have been published. Every one of these people comes up to me and tells me about their health adversity. And then they tell me that they've also learned these lessons during this time of recovery. Same story over and over again. So I beg of you, don't wait for a health adversity to embrace these lessons. Start with them now. So I want to thank Sarah for giving me the opportunity. Thank you for staying for this. Appreciate it. Anybody have any questions? Yes?
How long has it taken you to get this far?
So 3 years recovery. So I'm not sure what is tougher, recovering from the stroke or being in the facility. They're both pretty bad. The progress that is made in the recovery between my arm and my leg, I mean, it's this, you look for this much inches, not miles. Yes?
Will you repeat your 4 P's again, please?
Yes. Be patient, be present, be positive, be persistent.
So when you do find yourself going to a negative place, how do you bring yourself out? Like, how do you bring yourself out of that?
I fight hard. Every once in a while I'll call Cheryl and I'll go, "Oh my God, am I bored?" the last 2 or 3 days at this place is just killing me. But then I just look for something that'll give me, in my room I have so many different things that can provide me with positivity. Cheryl threw me an amazing surprise birthday party. It's 75 people there. Nobody spilled the beans, it was amazing. So I look up at the banner that says happy 70th birthday. And I've got pictures all around me of my kids and grandkids. And then I have all sorts of quotations up there, motivational things. And I've read them hundreds of times. Whenever I find myself in that place or in pain, I read these 2 particular quotes and they help me get out. Yeah. So one of them is the #1 predictor of success is grit. The ability to persevere, overcome, and move forward in spite of challenges, failures, and obstacles. That one's I've probably read 1,000 times. Yeah.
Any other questions back there? Yes. Sir.
Yes,
You have done a wonderful recovery.
thank you.
I'm a physician and I get tempted with my physician knowledge. Were you hypertensive prior to your episode?
No. Not that I was aware of, no. But I had a financial planning firm, and what I understood afterwards was how much stress I held with that. I had to sell the business right after the stroke, and I felt better because I wasn't feeling that tension and stress, because I really had a responsibility to my 100 families, and I didn't realize how much of a burden that I was holding. But it was really important to me that I take care of them. Thank you. Yes.
I'm curious about your relationship with Cheryl. I don't know, I know of her, but I don't know anything about her or what your story is, so I'm curious how that's evolved over these
Oh,
years.
speaking of patience, we're 22 years together. Yeah. We just celebrated that last week at the Beacon here in Marblehead. And I highly recommend the veal chop, by the way.
That's good.
Any other questions?
I have a question. I started, I set a goal when it happened, and I made the goal. I was what was a short period of time it happened. But after I made the goal, I was like, I'm really great. But then I just went back down and said,
I find that one of the most difficult things with this and the recovery is I don't know what the finish line is, or where it is, or what it looks like. That's what's really tough to actually understand that and to embrace it. Once I embraced that, and it was acceptance really of where I was, getting back to the 5 stages of grief. Acceptance was the last one, and that was the toughest one for me. But not knowing where that finish line is or what it looks like, especially when it comes to, I take more and more steps, which is great, but what does it mean? And what am I doing next? So I can't really set a goal other than to continue to improve, which is very difficult to visualize.
Yeah. No, I set it up that I would get back sailing, and I did. And I did it within 4 months, but I can't do anything on it. I can just sit on the boat,
Yeah.
and my crew has to do everything else. But and I was really pleased with it. I was very together. But then I just kind of said, with the therapy was going on, the physical therapy, it was like, it's not. I don't know what I'm looking for, but
Yeah.
And I think you just made a good
Yeah.
thing. We don't know the end line, and that's we don't know when we will be recovered.
Yeah. So my friend Richie, when he would scold me, he would talk about that my recovery was sort of like running the Boston Marathon. He said, right now you're at mile 8 or 9 and you're too far from the beginning to see the starting line. And you're too far from the finish to see the finish line. You're sort of in no man's land. You can't see either way. But just keep your head forward and go step by step. You'll get to where you need to be. And every once in a while I call Richie up and say, Richie, I'm at mile 16. Or Richie,